Okay, I'll have to shout, it's not going to work, but that's all right. Voice projection when you're a guide is a great thing, okay? I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight. What I'm going to do is, I've never had a group of this size for Reefs and Recs, let me tell you. Quagga Walk? Yes. Oliver Hill, Guns and Tunnels? Yes. Lighthouse, you can only take so many up, as you will discover, but never for Reefs and Recs. A group this size, what are we, at least 30? At least, yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you what I would do for Reefs and Recs, okay? This is what I would present to probably 4 or 5 people, and I've just come back from holiday. Now, if you go on a tour, which is best? Coach load of people or 3 or 4? It's always the 3 or 4 or the 10 at the most. You can interact with people. People like this, very difficult to interact with. But you never know, you guys may be lucky enough to actually get a group this size for Reefs and Recs. Okay, before I start, I'm just going to refer you to, okay, Reefs and Recs, you've all got the tour notes, yeah? Anyone had a look at the tour notes for Reefs and Recs yet? Yeah. Yeah, 1, 2, anyone else? Yeah, back there? Okay. So you can correct me when I make a mistake. Okay, the important thing on the notes, as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of notes here. Let's just, I'll pick something out. Plan your route to suit what you want to deliver. Choose the stop spots where you can best tell the elements of the contents of the story. Remember, these notes contain details that cannot be presented by a guide in a single tour, as your aim should be to engage and entertain visitors. Do not overwhelm them with your knowledge and preparation. In other words, little is best, as far as I'm concerned, okay? Little is best. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing before I start, the tour coordinator, the tour's coordinator is a guy called Drury Heath, and I'll just read out what he has actually sent something to me. All tours except the Lighthouse have been formatted to fit the framework set out by the RVGA Guides Toolkit. In other words, what you got there. The Wadjumut project has implications for most of our tours, and you'll be aware of the relevance of this to Aboriginal aspects of your tour. So, very important. Have we talked about the Wadjumut project yet? No? Okay, I won't go into it, but it's important, okay, that we acknowledge, I know that's controversial at the moment, we acknowledge Aboriginal, what has been done to Aboriginal people on the island. And the safety aspects of your tours were significantly reviewed as of last November, so all tours should document that. So safety, of course, and I won't mention that, but you should always talk about the safety aspect when you're looking at Reefs and Recs. What this means is that we need guides to stick to the content published in the tours document, and it's good to have our trainees aware of this from the start. I'm not monitoring this, says Heath. The RIA and Aboriginal visitors to Rocknest are, as they observe us conducting our tours. So, very important, okay? Now, to the tour. This tour is not, oh that works. This tour is not like Lighthouse or Oliver Hill, where you have to stick to a very strict timetable for various reasons. By and large, the tour notes say 45 minutes. You can stretch it to an hour or longer if you wish, if you've got no other duties after that. In other words, if someone is really interested in the City of York, you can talk to them about that until you're sick of them, okay? All right, let's start. Now, first of all, I want some volunteers. Thank you very much. Just hold that. Thank you. You want to start? No, drop that.
Really want to start.
Get close to the back. Yeah, that. Daily. Glasses will suit you. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Try to do us. Was that Judy for you today?
And the last one. Okay. Don't small my hand. Okay. So, Reefs, wrecks and daring sailors. So, the tour notes aren't explicit. Obviously, you start at the meeting post, which you'll see this weekend, which is outside the salt store. You can then walk as far as you like. Certainly, if you go up the steps into what is now the Mez Bar, there's a nice little plaque that you'll see in your notes that overlooks Thompson Bay. You can also go along to the boat shed, and I suggest that's what you do when you do a tour. Our previous notes actually said walk all the way up to Bathurst Lighthouse. That's quite ridiculous, okay? Well, in my view, anyway. So you can actually, as it says in there, you cut and paste what you are doing, okay, to where you actually present. And I start off and I present pictures tell 1,000 words. Has everyone seen this one? Okay? So, we all know, that Rottnest was formed by a big sand dune, or big sand dunes, a big sand dune ridge that came right out from the then mainland. Garden Island, Rottnest Island were sand dunes. Water permeating through actually caused the limestone to be created. And we go back 20,000 years, the Swan River came right through here, and it was at least 10 kilometres further west than West End, due to the Ice Age. As we came out of the Ice Age, water actually that was locked up in the snow and ice was melting, the sea levels came up. Those sea levels were down at least 130 metres. They started to come up, and by about 10,000 years ago, this is the map of Rottnest Island. Okay, here's the island, sticking out like a big limestone outcrop on a big sandy plain, similar to Bold Park or Kings Park. Aboriginal people, of course, could walk all the way out there, and this is where I generally actually bring in the Aboriginal element. We all know it as Rottnest. Most visitors will know it as Rottnest. Ask them, first of all, why it became known as Rottnest, and I think we all know. Okay, probably de Vlaming wrote in his charts or in his log, Rottnest Island. And when the British colonies started, it was changed to Rottnest. But then we can bring in the element, okay, yes, it's Rottnest now, but 10,000 years ago, when Aboriginal people were walking across here, and it was a very important meeting place for them, it was known as Wajima. Okay, so we can actually bring that element into the presentation. Next we come and I show people how 7,000 years ago, okay, Rottnest Island was just a spit. Okay, still Aboriginal people could walk out there. We've got stone tools going back at least 30,000 years. Okay, but the island is still slowly getting immersed. And this, if you haven't seen this as well, okay, this is a great tool to be used, okay, because it actually shows here's the limestone reef that comes out to Rottnest, and it actually is the danger to shipping. So, what is, oh, that was the other thing too. Anyone here English or British, UK? Yeah? Anyone else? Yeah? Yeah? Any other nationalities here that weren't born in Australia? Yeah, okay. With regard to Rottnest actually being part of the mainland and then sea level coming up, what you can do, who's heard of Doggerland? Yep, Doggerland, okay. So you can get a good map of Doggerland. Doggerland was actually same period 10,000 years ago, up to 7,000 years ago. The whole of the North Sea, or most of the North Sea, was actually land. Okay, and Britain, like it or not, Brexit or not, was actually attached to the mainland. Okay? As the ice melted right around the world, sea level came up, and Doggerland was no more. Okay, but they're forever actually trawling things up, because that's Dogger Bank where they fish, or I think they still fish. They're bringing up all sorts of ancient implements from 7 to 10 to 15,000 years ago. So you can actually engage your people from the Netherlands or Germany, whatever, they can actually relate to that. Okay, so that gets rid of our brick. Because once Rottnest was cut off from the mainland, it was perfectly all right until the Dutch came, and the English, or the British, because certainly when the British came, it became known as the brick on the doorstep of Fremantle. Why? Ships were always tripping over. And when you go up to the lighthouse, you have a look at the interpretive sign right in front of the lighthouse, it states exactly that. Rottnest is the brick in front of Fremantle that unwary skippers are always tripping over. Okay, I didn't get rid of my cat. Oh dear, Sad. Okay, so I then go on. Generally, what I do, I will talk about that outside the salt store. I will then either move up to the steps to where what is now the mez, and there's a little plaque overlooking the Thompson Bay. Because it's become the mez now, I tend to actually avoid that, and I'll go down, point out the anchors in front of the visitor centre, and then walk slowly towards the boathouse. And that's when I talk about the Dutch. Okay? Now, so far as the Dutch East India Company is concerned, or VOC, it was bigger than Microsoft, bigger than Google in its day, and from the 1600s right through nearly to the late 1700s, it had its own standing army. So it was an enormous organisation, and they were purely looking at trade. That's why basically when they did bump into Australia, and as we know, this is the interpretive little sketch. First of all, they used to hunt the coast around Africa, right across to India down, and get to Batavia, which is now Jakarta, and that was their main point, which became the Dutch East Indies. And they traded there for spices. Okay? They cornered the market just like all Elon Musk was trying to do. He cornered the market on EVs until very recently. Cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon. They cornered the market. It made them millions of whatever they were. Guilders. Yeah. So that's what they were trading. And they realised that if they went straight across the Indian Ocean, they could save around about a month or so if they turned left or north soon enough. Now, of course, what we're talking about, none of these things in the 1600s, okay, they had no means of determining longitude. Okay, latitude, straight across, fine. They had no means of actually determining, and that didn't come to the 1800s when ship's clocks came into consideration. They actually, because they didn't turn left soon enough, we've got 5 VOC wrecks up the coast of Australia. Most famous ones, I guess, are the Gilt Dragon and the Batavia. Okay, so that's the great thing about the VOC. It actually put Australia really on the map. Oh, there was Dampier up north, but really they were sending out search parties for those ships. And of course, the Fleming was one of those people that was searching for one of the ships. He came down to Rottnest and he named it Rottnest. The island in, not a very good picture. I did knock this up quite quickly, I'm sorry. Anyone know who that is?
Bourdain.
Yes, very good. Bourdain. Okay, who the cockatoo is named after. In actual fact, as we probably know, in the 1800, 1801, he mapped the coast of, along with his colleagues, the coast of Western Australia. He went right round, he met Flinders, and although England and France, or Britain and France were at war, they were quite friendly. But that's why we've got French names about the place. Captain Hamelin, of Hamelin Bay fame, he actually left a bottle on Rottnest with a note for Bourdain. They got separated and he left a note. But that's why, of course, the British came along, because they were concerned that the French would actually take over the north side, the west side of Australia, or New Holland as it was known as then. That's when I end up at the boathouse. Okay? Now, anyone been in the boathouse? Yep, good. Okay. In my view, when did you last go in there?
Last year.
Last year, yeah. Have you been in previously?
No.
No. I think. No one's I don't. I think the exhibits in there that were in there previously are much better. However, what you can do is actually talk about the whale boat, how it was used as, and whale boats were used as part of the pilot service. Now, that's an interesting thing. Everyone knows what a marine pilot is? Hands up if you don't know, lovely. Yeah. Now, okay, marine pilot, because certainly the younger people you get, you talk about a marine pilot, they will say, oh, someone who flies an aeroplane. Now, a marine pilot, and most, if not all, ports right around the world have a pilot boat service. Freman's the same, and it's been in existence since 1848, or before actually, but when it was put on Rottnest. But the pilots know the reefs, they know the currents, they know the tides, so on and so forth. So they board the vessel and actually assist to get the vessel into the port. Okay. I've just been on a cruise. I'm just trying to think where it was now, but they reckon it's gone from my having a Biden moment. Sorry. They said their pilot in this particular port, they needed 20 years' experience before they actually went out on the vessel on their own. And that's pretty important. So, pilot service, you can certainly talk about that. There's all the interpretive signs and so forth. What I generally do is talk about, I say, well, you can have a look at that after we've finished, come back and have a look. Tie some knots at the end or whatever. Don't know why I got those there, but anyway. Okay, so we come on, the British are now here. The British realise, because of the brick, that they need a lighthouse. And the first lighthouse was built 1842, finished in 1851, 9 years to complete, and put a light on top. They knew it wasn't tall enough, but they didn't have the money. And as an example, in 1831, Fremantle had just 27 ships for the year, 1831, 27 ships, so only one a month, or just over. When they asked the British Colonial Office if they could have some money to put the light on top, they said no. If you charge, or we will give you the money if you charge ships to actually come into the port. They didn't want that, they wanted to encourage ships in. So they cobbled something together, and you'll learn about that so far as your lighthouse. So you'll know that all your tours can be interlinked all the time. But yeah, they eventually cobbled something together. Actually, it was coconut oil to light the light, and off they went. But they knew it wasn't big enough. Now, what happened in the 1880s, 1890s in WA? Gold, exactly right. So we go from about one ship a month to one a week. So the pilot boat service actually increased, and they actually had 3 teams and 3 lots of pilots to actually row out to the ships and actually guide them. That's interesting in itself, because some of those people actually were gone for over 22 hours. So from Rottnest out to the ship, drop the pilot off, follow the ship back, and rowing or sailing, okay, then they could have been gone 22 hours. As you know from Rottnest and the conditions in July and August, it can be that bad. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But the main thing, I guess, are the shipwrecks. Now this is the gem. Okay? Now just a little cheat. Okay, you're meant to know this off the top of your head. Mostly I do, but there's the picture, and there's a little bit of stuff on the front. Okay, so you can hold that up and use your prompts on the back, okay? In case you have a Biden moment. Okay, so the gem. It was a cutter. I don't think that. 1876. Now, don't forget we've got 14 wrecks around the coast. One of the first wrecks in the area, well, even the Parmelia bringing the free settlers actually nearly went aground. The reason the pilot boat service was actually put on Rottnest because the governor, Fitzgerald, I think it was nearly shipwrecked, or nearly, the ship nearly ran aground. So he insisted, insisted that the pilot boat service we put 19 kilometres out to sea, so they didn't have so much time to come out from Fremantle. So, the gem coming from Donborough, sailed along by Thompson Bay, Transit Reef. Does everyone know where Transit Reef and Kingston Reef is? If you don't know, get a people have pointed out to you, but it's only about a kilometre and a half. Kingston Reef is off, well, Vincent's Cottage, in fact. Sailing along, the observer for the pilot boat service and the lighthouse saw it sailing along. Half ahead, the observer there, the Port Authority man, he actually saw same thing, turned, looked back, gone. All I could see was a mast sticking out of the water. So, police come out from, 10 people on board, by the way. Police come out, they look, they actually get divers from Malaysia come and actually dive on the vessel in about 10 or so metres of water. No, all 10 died. What they did notice was that the gem had been towing a skiff, and it looked like someone had tried to cut the rope, but it hadn't succeeded. The ship had gone down, taking the skiff with it. Again, the divers wouldn't go right into the vessel because there was a lot of debris in there, and they were very, very reluctant to go in there. In fact, they didn't. But 10 people, gone. What happened to them? Two things. Who's got the glasses? And the wheat bag. Okay, it was carrying wheat from Dongra. Two theories. The wheat, actually, the ship sprung a leak. The wheat got wet. And just by coincidence, right where people saw it, it expanded and just sent the ship to the bottom. The other theory, I think that's the marine archaeological people think it's more likely the captain needed glasses because it actually went straight into a reef hole. Everyone went down below to see if they could fix the hole, and it went down straight away. Shipwreck number 1. Now, shipwreck number 2 is my favourite. The Denton Holes.
Oh, yes,
Okay. The Denton Holes, coming all the way from Glasgow with 1,300 tonnes, metric tonnes of pipes, 300 tonnes of general cargo. It came in and it was spotted at North Head then, and also the lighthouse keeper and the pilot boat service on Loch Ness saw it, okay, and they sent the pilot boat out for it. Again, they were sailing, rowing. The ship went straight past the pilot boat service and it went aground on the reef. Got stuck fast. They tried to get it off. It couldn't. Actually, a bit of a storm came up. It pushed it further onto the reef, and it was considered completely lost. No loss of life, though. But interestingly, it came from Glasgow. What do we have in Glasgow? Okay. Actually, it's ginger ale. Of that 300 tonnes of general cargo, a lot of it was Scotch whisky. Okay, and what actually happened was the prison superintendent, actually, it's one eye. What are all those people doing out there fishing. And in fact, what they were doing, and I think, no, it was going in about 6 metres of water from memory, and how they managed to hook up the bottles of scotch, but apparently they did. In fact, the salvage people, when they actually were trying to actually get salvage, they were actually prosecuted for smuggling. And the story goes, and as I said, I'm not entirely sure about our notes, but go by the notes, that there was a lot of people, obviously prison warders, because there wasn't anyone else on the island, getting off a little bit merry. Okay, and they were actually fishing up the scotch and having a drink, and even stashing it away in the sand dunes for a later use. My favourite, the Denton Holes.
What year was that?
That was 1890. And then we come to the big one. Yeah, it's the City of York. Okay. And the City of York is an interesting one in the fact that the captain started to do all the right things. He actually had an officer who'd been to Fremantle before. The officer actually told him, and if you want more information, actually, not just the notes, but go to the Chapman Library, and there's some interesting stuff in there. I think it's actually in the notes as an amendment or links to John Watson's story about the sinking of the City of York, and it's really quite interesting, and it will actually give you more information. So he did all the right things. Talked to his officer. He looked at his charts. The charts said he had to come in to Rocknest, lay off at least 1.25 miles from the island, wait for the pilot boat. Storm came up. By the time he got there on the 11th of July, it was 1899. The storm had gone, but the sea was what they call very boisterous. There was big waves. It was really rough. He'd done all the right things, and then he started to actually, I don't know, a Biden moment or something, or a Trump, I don't know. That he actually started to go towards the island. Lighthouse keeper was concerned about this, and he sent a flare up. Captain thought, that means pilot boat is over there. The pilot actually, the boat had steered the boat towards the island. Lighthouse keeper, really concerned. So he lit a bonfire at the base of the lighthouse. And this is, of course, this is the 1895-96 lighthouse, okay? Now, that bonfire is 50 metres, because the lighthouse is 30 metres tall. It sits about 50 metres above sea level. How he thought that bonfire and the flare-up was the pilot boat, God only knows, but he went straight towards it, and he was making sounding as he went. And, of course, when he certainly realised he got down to about 9 metres, 6 metres, he started to panic, but, of course, too late. The boat went straight onto the reef. He then made some further mistakes, because he said, okay, abandon ship. 6 guys got off on one ship, on one longboat, made it away safely, but they all, 20 of them, 26 in the crew, got on the captain's lifeboat, or skiff. There was 20 people on there, not good, but they managed. They actually went off from the ship. Sea started to calm. The captain again made his other mistake. He said, well, get back on board. As they tried to get back on board, overturned, and 11, including the captain, drowned. Now, the ship's cook managed to swim to the boat that was aground, threw lines out, and some people, and he saved another 7 people. So, out of the 26, 11 drowned, which caused the Bathurst Lighthouse to be built. It caused extra telephone and communication to be put between the pilot boat service and the lighthouse and so on and so forth, and communications to the shore. But unfortunately, 11 people drowned. There was one exception though. The cat was sensible. It didn't get off the boat and it was saved. Okay. All right. Now, anyone got any questions? What am I missing? Okay. One final story. Have I got time? Yeah? Okay. Unfortunately, at the boathouse, there used to be a skiff that was no more than, it was a real skiff, about 3 metres long. Okay, they've taken it away and put it in the storage. But it's a great story. It's not a shipwreck as much, but it's a mystery which I love to tell. The pilot boat service, as I've said, was sail and rowing, and that encapsulates the whaleboat in the pilot boat service. But by about 1901, because the port was so busy, they introduced a steamboat, the Pelican. Pelican was a steamboat, and it did all the work, obviously, no rowing, off it went and dropped the pilot off, so on and so forth, a lot easier. One day, the ship's cook and one of the officers actually came ashore from the Pelican, which was actually moored about 2 kilometres off of Rottnest, off of Thompson Bay, and they rowed ashore. Now, a lot of these accidents, and when you have a look at all the other ones, and you probably don't need to tell visitors this, but a lot of them was the fault of this stuff. Because the pilot boat people used to drink, the ship's captains used to drink, and these guys were no exception. We don't think. Anyway, why else would they come ashore on Rottnest? Anyway, at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they decided to row back to the Pelican. Never seen again. 1901, they informed the police. Police came out, they scoured the island, they sent boats right round the island to see what they could see, and on horseback right round the island. Not seen, nothing. About 3 weeks later, their boat, their little skiff, turns up at the cove. But still no humans on it. The front's got a bit of a dent. The planking of the skiff has been pulled out because an oar has been fashioned out of that. One oar has been completely gone, and the other oar is actually used as a tiller. So they've actually butchered the whole thing in order to create oars, and they were still there. The other thing on the stern of the boat, the back of the boat, was carved at compass points. So obviously they've been swept out to sea and they were trying to get back. So they lost one oar, what could they do? But the telling thing is, down under the seat of the skiff was a pipe. Now, that proves, so far as the police were concerned, that the skiff didn't turn up upright, otherwise the pipe would have dropped out. But it's there, it must have just been floating about for the last 2 or 3 weeks. What happened to them? Nobody knows. They think they recovered some bodies about 3 months later from memory, but they're not sure whether they were theirs or not. Probably were. But what they probably think happened, they lost an oar, wind got them, took them out to sea, they did all the right things trying to get back, and then a steamer came along, bumped them in the night, causing a bump at the bow of the vessel, and they went overboard, but the skiff was upright. But we don't know. Lovely little tale, because there's several things similar have happened in the recent past. But yeah, it's probably due to the drink. Has anyone got any questions? No? Okay. That's the sort of thing I would actually present to people. It's quite up to you. As far as what, as I say, you've got heaps of material there. It's what you are comfortable with.
You always take the props off.
No, not always. I do not the bricks. I might pick up a rock or something like that. I might take a pipe. The stocks, no. But yeah, I'm a great believer, certainly in pictures, because pictures tell 1,000 stories, and it helps paint the picture. So the more pictures you can get, and there are lots and lots of art. We're upgrading them, but there should be sufficient aids in the hub that you can take with you for the various settlement tours. Yeah, but yeah, it tells 1,000 stories. There's a picture.
So, Ian, you know, there's actually another true story. I'm from Glasgow, and there's a story about, and they made a film, two films out of it, called Whiskey Galore. And there was a ship that was shipwrecked in the northwest of Scotland, and it was full of whiskey that was going from Scotland to America during the Second World War. Yeah. And it beached somewhere, and all the water went out and stole all the whiskey. And it was, it's a very good movie.
Yeah.
It's a true story.
I can tell one more if time. Rather wind up. Okay. The story. Yeah. That's why you got that there. It's the story of Lehman, and he was the first man that we know that set foot on Rock Nest Island, and that's again in the notes. But what it amounted to is Lehman actually went to tremendous lengths after he was marooned north of Geraldton. You sport one, not. He was marooned, but he managed to get back. I should make a film about it. Him and 13 of the people that were stranded with him rowed and sailed all the way back to Batavia. It's a cracking story, because only 4 of them survived. 3 of them died of thirst on the 3 weeks going up to Java, drinking their own urine and their own and seawater. Kids love that, by the way. But why I've got this is that when he was marooned by Volkerson, and that was his captain, and he never actually, what I would have done was had a go at him, either that or he should have been charged and hung, but he wasn't. Thank you very much. Three